requests come through a couple of different times from a couple of different customers of ours. So the scenario is, let's say I am managing accounts. I have an assigned to user. Assigned to doesn't really dictate anything with security within Sugar. It's just essentially saying this person is in charge of this particular record. So one thing I want to make sure that I have in a lot of cases here is, if Jim in this case is the assigned to on the accounts, unless he actually went and made the account, his teams that he's the default member of don't necessarily come through unless he actually goes and makes that record. So by default, when Sugar users make records, Sugar looks at your user profiles, sees what your default teams are that are set up, and always stamps your default teams that you're a part of for those records you make. So you always can view it, because teams is what drives what you actually can see from a security standpoint. But if you have other users that are making records for other people, and you want to make sure that they can assign those records to other sales reps in this case, that they don't have to go and figure out what teams are this user a part of, if you don't have global as like the default for your organization. If you segregate out your records using teams, this becomes very important, because you don't want to necessarily assign a record to a rep if they can't see it, though, because they're not on the team of the record, so they have no access to actually view it. So one of the customizations we've done is say, hey, when this actually gets set, we're going to go and look at this sales rep and figure out what teams is their default team part of, and updating the record automatically, so whoever makes this record doesn't have to worry about it. All they have to do is say, hey, assigned to is this user. We're going to have logic on the back end that fires on the save, and then it sets the default teams for that record, regardless of what the user who's actually making the record has as their default team. So let's go ahead and see if this works. So Jim is currently assigned to on this one. I believe if I just make an update here, it might pick it up. Didn't. That's all right. Let's go ahead and step through at least what that looks like. So again, essentially it's just a logic hook that's going to fire after save, I believe. Well, this one's before save. We'll do it as after. But what this is going to do is say, hey, if the assigned user is not empty, we want to go ahead and go through this logic here. Since we have the access of who the user is and their ID within the system, I can say, hey, go ahead and load up that user's record. And this is what this is doing here. So we're grabbing the user's object, passing in the ID, and now Sugar's given us access to all the information about who, in this case, the assigned user has. So any of their name information, emails, default teams, all that good stuff. So there's two fields in particular here you want to make sure are used when you're doing something like this. You have the default team primary, which is this variable here on the user object called default_team. And then you want to make sure that you also do the team sets. So any of the additional teams that they also might be a part of. And that is the team set ID in this case. So since this is an after save, we actually want to run a SQL statement to do this. We're just going to update that account table. And we're setting the team ID, the team set, based on that information we got from the user that's assigned, where the ID of the account in this case is our current record that we're updating. So let's see if we can actually get this one to work. Actually, we want to make one update since I already installed this one. So when you install things in the module loader, you have a manifest file, and every time you're making updates, you've got to make sure you change that version. Otherwise, Sugar will not pick that one up. All right, so I'm just creating my zip file to upload. So again, when you're uploading any kind of customizations or any packages, integrations, you're always going to be using the module loader for that. So I'm just going to browse my files here. Here's my recent one. And I'm going to go ahead and upload that. And we'll go ahead and hit install. We're ready to commit this one, so we'll go ahead and install it. Again, best practice, never do these kinds of things during production hours, because this is doing repair rebuilds within the system. It's going to refresh everybody who's currently logged in's session. So you don't want to have any issues with users calling you up saying, what just happened? My screen is refreshed. So it takes a little bit of time, especially in our demo instances here. All right, looks good. We can look at the logs. So you can see it's doing rebuilds here, but it has installed successfully. So we're gonna go back to the module loader in this case. You can see it's already trying to do a refresh. All right, let's try it one more time. All right, so let's take a look and see, now that we have our package installed. What this is going to do now is, when having the assigned users set, we're going to make sure that our teams that we have set on that record that we're making or updating is reflective of who the assigned users default teams are. So you can see right now we're going to use an existing record, and we have Global and West set as the teams. Jim is the assigned to. Now, as soon as I save this, you can see now East was actually added as an additional team member here. So Jim right now has Global as his primary, and then East and West as additional teams for his default team. And again, this is going to work on brand new accounts as well. So we'll make a test account here for Jim. We'll change our assigned to, since I'm logged in as Jen. And you can see by default, since I'm logged in as Jen, her default was just Global. So I don't have to worry about actually updating that. As soon as I hit save here, and let's go load that record. Jim's our assigned to, and our logic took care of updating the teams based on Jim's default team.